Schachter-Singer theory of emotions, but more often it's called the two-factor theory, which I like. I mean, it's not like I'm trying to get the credit for my own name on this. It's the two factors. There's two factors going into this. So the way we envision this with the two-factor theory of emotions is we've got that same freaky-deaky creature, right? So this weird freaky-deaky creature shows up in our classroom. So it's a stimulus out there, right? It's a physiological stimulus. Like, it exists, physiological. It's right there in front of us. But also there's this situational context. Like, where are you when this is taking place? Is this at a Halloween costume party? Is it while you're walking down the street? Is it in the classroom? Like, what is the context of seeing this thing right here? The reason why that's important is because that's going to feed into these next steps here. So this physiological stimulus is going to then is going to lead to whatever that perception is that leads to that bodily reaction. So when someone jumps out at you, it is going to lead to suddenly a response to that. But we're also going to be taking into account the context in which this is happening. We're going to be interpreting what's taking place based on kind of, what the situation is that we're dealing with. And these two things, they interact with each other. There's sort of this, kind of like we experience what's happening in our body. At the same time, we're thinking about what this experience means. And these together then is what ultimately leads to whatever our emotional state is. Sort of this combination of our physiological arousal and our own thinking about it. So this is what makes this theory a little bit different here. So we're kind of thinking about it. So we could say with this theory that what's happening then is that we're interpreting, or you could say we're labeling, we're interpreting our arousal by thinking about it. So this arousal is happening and we're interpreting what it means. And so this makes it different than like the James Lange theory where they thought kind of there was a separate constellation of like physiological feelings attached to each different kind of emotion. Like maybe this emotion has things like your palms are sweaty, your heart's racing. This next emotion, maybe it's your armpits are sweating and your heart's racing. But what they're saying with this is that really what's happening is you've got these physiological responses, and essentially we're interpreting what they mean. So you could have the same physiological responses happening for like joyful surprise as you would happening for fear, but it's really about how we're interpreting that physiological arousal. And so they tested this in a really interesting way. What they did was we're going to bring in some undergrad college students, and we're going to get them all vaccinated. No, that's not what's happening here, but it kind of looks like it, right? No, so what we're doing is we're going to be bringing in a bunch of participants. They probably will be college students, because that's who we like to do experiments with. And they're falling into, so each one of these, there's 3 different types of people going into each one of these that's going to be working with this confederate, which is basically someone that's in on the experiment, but they don't know it. So in each one of these groups, there's going to be one person who's going to be injected with a solution. And the solution we're injecting them with is adrenaline. So adrenaline kind of gets your heart racing, gets you kind of aroused, right? And for one person in each one of these groups, we're going to tell them that you're being injected with adrenaline. So you're going to feel your heart racing, you're going to maybe have palms that are sweaty, but you know why this is happening, right? Because you got injected with adrenaline. With the next person, we're going to be comparing this. We need to have a control group, right? So the next person, we're going to inject them with saline, but we're going to tell them that it's like a vitamin booster. So they're getting saline, which shouldn't do anything at all. It's basically salt water. We're telling them it's a vitamin booster. Maybe they'll feel their fingers tingling, but you shouldn't have any kind of real sensations coming from this other than that. This last person right here, we're going to inject with adrenaline and tell them it's a vitamin booster. So they don't know what they're getting injected with, even though we're giving them adrenaline. So one group gets adrenaline. So this guy and this lady right here, they both get adrenaline. They're told what it is. One person from each group, they get injected with saline, told it's a vitamin booster. And one person from each group gets injected with adrenaline and told it's a vitamin booster. Then what we do is we take these people from these groups, and so one of these people at a time is going to go sit with this confederate in a room. So they're part of this experiment. You get a vitamin booster or whatever to begin with. Then you have to go into this next room and fill out forms. And there's already someone in the room filling out forms. And so for this first person that goes in there, the confederate, the person that's in on the experiment, is acting super angry. They're just pissed off at the world. They're like, God damn it, I hate doing this, but I'm taking this stupid class with Dr. Andelin where he makes us do all these assignments. I'm not doing great in the assignments. Now I've got to go and do these extra credit things. I don't even care about psychology. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fill out these things all exactly the opposite way and screw up all of their results just for fun. So that's our angry Confederate. Over here on the other side, we're going to have our happy Confederate. So this person is just super overjoyed with being here. So essentially, they're going to be filling out these surveys and just be like, this is so cool. I love what I'm doing. This is fantastic. I'm helping out research right here. We're going to understand the mind better just based on what it is we're doing. Isn't this awesome? That's our happy Confederate. So this person that's in the room with them, the person that's unknowing, if they got injected with a substance and they didn't know what it was, they're going to be interpreting the feelings in their body based on the person in the room. That's the hypothesis with this study. And that is pretty much what they found. So, in particular, they found the strongest responses when they had the stimulus, which was the forms that the people were filling out, plus the drug we injected them with, the adrenaline, where the adrenaline is going to be causing this bodily response where their heart's racing, and they're going to be taking into account this situation that they're in. So they're with this other angry person who's saying all these things. Oh, yeah, this, you know what? Yeah, this is stupid. Forms are stupid. Why am I wasting my time with this? Which ultimately leads to them then feeling that emotion of anger. So they're interpreting that physiological arousal by thinking about it. Similar situation happens with the happy people as well. In fact, that's what was originally reported in this study. In terms of the ability to replicate it, it hasn't been shown to be quite as replicable, this bottom part right here, injected with epinephrine and not knowing about it with a happy person. Getting that strong response has not been as replicable, but the strong angry response is consistent with other findings. So essentially, this is another chart showing the same thing. We've got the situational context, that physiological stimulus, where they're going to be interacting with each other and ultimately leading to our emotional state. And so this is sometimes also referred to as being the spillover effect, where it's like you have this emotion from this one context that's spilling over into this other situation here. You have that arousal from that one event spilling over into the next. So looking at this and thinking about what we know about the way emotion works, and like what I was telling you about with the quadriplegic patients, you can see that arousal, basically, that physiological arousal is what's fueling our emotion. The emotion's coming from that physiological arousal in our body, but it's the cognition, it's how we're thinking about that arousal is taking place that channels it. And the book talks about this fantastic experiment. Have you guys ever been here? You have. This is the Capilano Bridge. This is in Vancouver, BC. We could all go visit it if you're able to cross the border. Are we allowed to cross the border? Probably. I don't know if they've changed those things with COVID. It was a long time we couldn't cross the border. Anyway, Capilano Bridge. If you go up to Vancouver, there's this bridge that's really high up, as you can tell, way up above the ground. Yeah, you can walk along. It's high up there. It's really wobbly. It costs like $25, so it kind of doesn't feel worth it. I'm like, man, if you're not on a roller coaster, $25 seems kind of expensive. I got to walk with my own legs. Give me like a Segway or something. I don't know. But anyway, so this high up bridge, you can cross. You have to pay to do it. You walk across it. It's kind of scary, right? You're up high. It's kind of wobbly. There's another bridge much lower down here. This is a much more sturdy bridge. You don't have to pay to go on. You can walk straight across if you just want to kind of walk across some other kind of bridge going between the 2 points. Well, they did a study with this. They did a study in 1974 where essentially we're utilizing this two-factor theory of emotion and testing this, where what they did, let's see if I can make this pop up here. Yeah. So participants, what they did was, it was just people naturally walking across these bridges. So what they did was we had a person that's a survey taker at the end of the bridge that was just asking people that naturally cross the bridge, like, hey, is it right if I ask you a couple questions, just take a quick survey with you? So these participants that were crossing the bridge, either that were voluntarily crossing, of their own choice, of one of those two bridges, either the high and wobbly or the low and sturdy, they get to the end, and the research assistant asked them to complete that survey, and then at the end of giving them the survey, by the way, I should mention it's male participants. We're doing this as an all-male study because back in the 1970s, you're idiots. I don't know. We didn't test everybody of both genders. So this is just all males going across this bridge that we're asking about this. And the research assistant is a female. So this research assistant asked them for survey completion. At the end of it, she says, oh, and here's my number, so if you have any questions, you can call me to find out more about the study that we're doing. And so what happened, the interesting part of this is that with the participants that crossed the bridge, a majority of the all-male participants called after crossing the high bridge. So more than half the participants crossing the high bridge called up that research assistant. You know, maybe asking for dates, and you're like, we could have a little more talking right here. Maybe this leads to something else. Whereas a minority of the all-male participants on the lower bridge called afterwards. So there was less people calling this research assistant after crossing the much lower, sturdier bridge. And they didn't find any difference in terms of how likely it was for these participants to call up the research assistant if we made the research assistant male. So this was taken as being that essentially what's happening is the spillover effect here, where essentially what's happening is these people, these all-male participants here crossing that high up, scary bridge, they're feeling their heart racing. They're feeling they're a little bit sweaty. They got that physiological arousal happening, right? And now they're meeting this research assistant. They're thinking, maybe the feeling I'm having right here is attraction. Maybe I'm feeling this arousal because I'm aroused by this research assistant that I'm interacting with. So that's what they took this to be, basically, is that this was their claim, that was that essentially that we saw more people calling because they were misinterpreting. There was this spillover of that emotion where they were misinterpreting their physiological arousal from crossing the bridge as being this arousal that they felt towards this woman that was the research assistant asking them questions. But there's definitely other explanations for this. Does anyone have any idea what else might have been a factor here? Yeah.
Their taste in women.
It could.
They were more likely to do it if they were single, kind of like the romantic.
Sure, maybe there was some different romantic compatibility that we didn't even think about. I mean, they were voluntarily crossing the bridge, so it's not like we randomized the people into these groups. Is there anything else anyone can think of? Yeah. Ooh, only risky people do it. So these were already risk-taking people that were up there. They self-selected into these groups. We didn't randomize. Kind of like was already said, we didn't randomize them. So they were self-selecting into these groups. So like you're saying right there, like maybe it was the risk-taking people to begin with that are making the riskier choices. And so it makes more sense that maybe we'd be more likely to hear them calling the research assistant because they're already those more risk-taking people. So yeah, those are some great explanations right there, and it definitely leads you to think like maybe there's some other factors going on here.